And I want to float back, and then I want to talk about some other stuff in the DVDs. Is 200 years ago, 100 years ago, British archaeologists coming over here, or the British Museum, whatever, over in Egypt, South America, the United States, whatever, and they immediately make a statement. Well, these were made with copper chisels. Well, we
Right.
didn't know any better back then. So it goes into the books. It's what we are taught in class, and then that's where it stays. Today we know about diorite. We know how hard andesite is. We know how hard red granite is, and we know how ineffective copper chisels or anything else that was used in the Bronze Age is against these materials. You can't cut diamond with a copper chisel or chicken bones. It doesn't happen. And today we are all the wiser to that. I don't know when the Orthodox archaeology is going to backpedal and say, okay, we need to rewrite some textbooks. But it's inevitable. We're not that dumb now. And that's it. And it's guys like you and other guys, Brian Forrester and Michael Cremo and Robert Schock, and guys out there that are willing to, John Anthony West. It's that type of research that all of us now, that is where, I want to say this correctly and with respect, but that's where the real research is happening today. It's outside of the box where where it was outside of the box 150 years ago. You know what I mean? That was outside of the box. Now today, it's all of us that are in shows like this where we are thinking outside the box, where the real research is going, and I commend you guys for that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay, all right. Now let's have some fun. You know what? I just got some email from Graham Hancock. Came in 4 minutes ago. He wants to talk tomorrow. Wow. Hey, that's a cool email, huh?
Hi, Graham.
Hey, Graham, what's up? I had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. We're trying to schedule him coming back before he heads back to England. And, wow, I'm going to have to change schedules this week. Oh, okay. Now, Jaime Maussan. Let's talk about a little bit about Mexico and what's going on there. But before we do that, with all of the stuff with watchers that you guys have put together and everything that you have, everybody that you've spoken to, what's the one piece of evidence? Oh, and we have to talk about the Malibu deep underwater base. Also, you know what? Before I get to that question, while it's on the front of my mind, Rick, audience, I'm going to announce this right now. In Watcher 7, Rick sent me the map. Have you seen this, L.A., by the way?
Yeah.
Did he share this with you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In Watcher 7, Rick videotapes himself a UFO on Pacific Coast Highway, and in Watcher 7, it's subtitled, Shot at Point Magoo. Now, we all know now what was to your right as you were heading up the highway is that discovery that's out there. You didn't know about that when you shot this videotape. It was before we did the discovery. So I want you to take the audience through that really quick. It's pretty significant. And had you known about the Malibu base, I think you would have presented that UFO you would have expanded on it a little bit. But what did you see? And were you just driving up PCH and you happen to have a camera in your car? How did it happen?
No, it was Father's Day, and so my wife Mary goes, "What do you want to do today?" And I'm somewhat a dweeb, I guess. I want to go shoot some B-roll for Watcher 7. And I'm jumping up and down with glee, and she's going, "Oh, okay, great, let's go do that." So where do we have to go? And I said, "I want to go out there by Point Magoo, where they always are showing like Iron Man driving by in his, Audi, because it's a really cool area."
It is. It's beautiful.
So I have a 2001 Corvette, and I use it in watchers because it's a fun car. It's very shootable.
You don't have to
And
make excuses. It's a cool car.
It's an excuse to drive it somewhere.
Right,
So,
right. There you go.
You know, I also have a couple GoPro cameras, and so I thought, well, I just need some fill shots for some of the stuff that we're talking about. And of course, LA lives in Malibu, so he's like pretty much in that area anyway. But I attached a camera to the fender of the car and was driving past that big, huge rock there at Point Mugu, and went one direction, turned around, reattached the camera on the hood of the car, and drove back. And so basically I'm headed towards Santa Monica on PCH, going by the big rock there with the ocean off to the right, and didn't see anything. You know, there was just nothing to see. And I get home and I put up the video on my HD TV in my studio. I go, what's this annoying light in the sky? Is there an internal reflection? Because, you know, GoPro cameras have this clear case that protects them from rocks and wind, and, you know, you can use them underwater and stuff. And this is back before the Hero 3 Plus came out, so I did this with a Hero 2 camera. Well, it was every time I was facing Santa Monica on PCH, I got this twinkling white orb in my shot. So, I mean, I've done this a long time. I know the difference between a lens flare and, you know, reflections or a lens reflection, that kind of thing. And it wasn't any of those things, but I thought, well, why didn't I see it with my eye?
It's
really
big.
existed?
It's big.
Yeah, and I didn't see anything. So I wonder if it's like one of these UFOs that Jaime's always talking about that's only seen in the infrared spectrum. So I grabbed my Sony remote, shot it at the Hero camera, and put the little monitor on the back of the camera, and boink, I could see a bright blue light flickering in the lens when I did that. I'm going, it's picked up an infrared UFO.
Wow.
And it was there for, oh my gosh, I was doing that for almost an hour. So that UFO, I'm estimating it was just hanging there for at least 40 minutes. So, you know, the Hero is not the best camera to do that kind of thing because it's an incredibly wide angle lens. It's like 14 millimeters or something. So it makes everything that's already small, smaller. So I took the shot into After Effects, which is a kind of a professional compositing program. And you can enlarge stuff greatly in After Effects and really see what's going on there. And to my shock, there were like two little lights on this thing oscillating back and forth. And when I kept looking at it, it was throwing off what looked like sparks, little beams of light. Now, they couldn't have been light beams because they were curved, and like it was like throwing particles off. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. But that thing was up there. So I think the idea that there's some kind of a base out there is most likely factual.
LA, how close are you to the Malibu? What part of Malibu are you in?
I'm in the Santa Monica Mountains. I'm in North End. About 15 minutes from Point Doom.
What, with all of your time out there, and I know you've lived there for a long time, a lot of sightings. Have you seen anything personally out over the Malibu base?
Yeah, we actually covered it in the very first Watchers. Rick did a sort of a mock-up of what my wife and I saw. We ate at Spruzzo's, a little Italian restaurant. It's winter time. I forget the month, but it was winter. It was dark. So we finished eating and we got in the car, and she's driving, and we're driving up Pacific Coast Highway to home, north on Pacific Coast. And we're on Zuma Beach, PCH, right by Zuma Beach. And she goes, "What the heck is that?" And I look out the window, and there's a very, very bright light hanging in the sky. I go, "Oh, that's probably a plane." You know, when the plane comes at you, that's what you see. So I keep looking at it, and she's driving, so she's not looking at it. And I'm going, it's not moving. It's just kind of sitting there. This is kind of weird. Maybe it's a helicopter. And I kept looking at the thing, and about a minute later, all of a sudden, above it, another light appeared and slowly descended into the larger light. And then the larger light broke apart in concentric circles and vanished. And at that point, I said, "Oh my gosh, we're not in Kansas anymore." And about 2 minutes later, bam, it reappeared again. We watched it do this 2 or 3 times. Our car was towed. We had a radiator problem about a month and a half ago. So I'm in the car. Car's in the back of a flatbed tow truck. I'm in the cab with the driver. We're driving down to Malibu Auto to get my car fixed, okay? And talking to the tow truck driver, just making small talk. And he goes, how long have you lived here? And I go, well, since 1974. That's like, 40 years. And he goes, wow, you're an old timer. I go, well, I guess you could say that. He pauses a moment, and he goes, you ever see anything weird up there? And I just start laughing. And I told him, I said, well, you're looking at a man who's written 9 books on the subject, related or directly about it. And he goes, oh, yeah, really? And I told him what I did. And he says, he was driving down Pacific Coast Highway about 1 o'clock in the morning, and above him were 3 craft. He pulled over. There were other cars stopped on Pacific Coast Highway. There were 3 craft, and this is what's interesting. It's in the vicinity of near the Malibu Fish, right on Pacific Coast Highway. That is a few miles from where the site is. In other words, it's inland from the site.
Right.
For these craft to go there would be, it's like they're still in the parking lot, if you get my drift.
Right.
Okay? It's like right there. And there were 3 of them. He took his iPhone to get a picture, and his iPhone was too hot to handle and was glowing orange. And the phone finally cooled down. We watched these things for about 15 minutes. 2 of them sped off northward. The other one went straight up in the sky.
What do you think now that this potential discovery of an alien base or otherwise right out there, right at that spot in between Magoo and Doom?
Say that again, one more time.
I said, what do you think about now with all of the sightings that have been going on in Malibu for decades? You've seen them. Rick has documented. It's been going on forever. And now this potential base is discovered right there in between Doom and Magoo. Significant?
Yeah, that's one of the deepest trenches on the planet. The Channel Islands. That waterway is where all the cargo ships go. We talked about maybe getting out there. From what I understand, that water is very, very dark, and visibility is not really good. Very dark, visibility sucks, basically. So, even if we had a camera that would go down 1,000 feet or whatever, I don't know what we'd see. You'd probably see 20 feet in front of a light, and that would be it. Before we mount an expedition like that, we need to do our homework and talk to divers who sort of know the area. And there may be a time of the year, let's say when the Santa Anas are blowing, where the tides get reversed and the water clears up, and that might be the time to do it. Or if an El Nino comes up, the water can change. I've seen it on Zuma, where tides like El Nino will happen from Mexico, and all of a sudden visibility is like Hawaii. You can see everything. Most of the time you can't see anything. So, we need to do the homework before we go out there. But I would love to check that out, and I think there's something to it.
And also the rumors of giants on the Channel Islands too, as well.
Yep, they're out there.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, you know what? We're almost out of time. We didn't take any phone calls. Let's give away some DVDs real quick. 323-825-5045. I've opened up the phone lines. 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. No, they're not trying to steal my discovery. We're talking about doing this together, Brad. Okay? Just came in a tweet. 323-825-5045, and we'll give away some Watchers DVDs. Okay, while we're waiting for the phone calls to come in, one of the things that struck me, and I didn't know about this, was when you guys were down there talking to Jaime Maussan, and he brought in that ball that I don't even know how to describe it. That's evidence. That came from the sky. How many feet across was it? Would you say maybe 2 feet, 24 inches, a 2 foot metallic ball?
Yeah, I would say it's about 2 feet wide, and the metal was quite thick. I mean, it must have been at least three eighths of an inch thick, and the thing was heavy.
What? 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 What do you
Probably
think
weighed
it was?
35 pounds, I would guess.
Yeah, it was huge, and
Yeah.
and it had like a blast hole out of the side. Would you? How would you describe that? A drone? I mean, what would the purpose of something like that even be?
We well, Steve Colburn, was the scientist for ANS Research, worked with Roger Lear, believed that maybe it was one of those orbs that seemed to be seen over Mexico coming out of these ships, which we, because of Jaime's kindness, gave us the footage of this thing, which was really quite amazing, with these ships being expelled out of the ends of a larger craft that looked kind of like one of those balls. And there was more than one person filming it as it was happening. So if you looked at it towards the sun, the little balls looked dark, and if you looked at the other camera shot, they looked white because they were reflecting light. However, there's also the idea that this could be a hydrazine tank that had come off of some satellite that was in orbit. That's also a distinct possibility. So, I mean, we just don't know. After studying hydrazine tanks and how they're made, they coat them with sort of a fiberglass coating, which I'm not quite sure what that's for. Maybe it's to keep them from bursting in space. But it's what these satellites use as rocket fuel, which is probably what they're used when they're retasked and moved around in orbit. They have to shoot a jet of this stuff out. And hydrazine is pretty much the same kind of stuff that they use in airbags. So it could be that, and that would lend some credence to why it came down with such explosive force. But we just don't know.
Well, why wouldn't a government come forward, whether it's NASA or Russia or China or whoever else has got satellites up there?
Well, NASA did come in after it fell. Apparently, they're tracking everything that comes down, and wanted it back, and Jaime wouldn't give it to them. It was found by a farmer and given to Jaime, and people bring him stuff all the time. I mean, we saw some stuff there that we can't really talk about that was brought to him that's just unbelievably amazing. And he gets this stuff coming to him all the time. He has a huge audience of about 3 million viewers, and he's been doing this show for 20 years. So, you know, he's the guy. He's the point guy. If you lost your suitcase in the airport there in Mexico City, and it had Jaime Maussan, and it would end up in his office. Everybody knows where he is, how to find him. You know, so.
But my point is, why wouldn't a government come forward and say, "Look, this fell off a satellite"?
I don't know why they wouldn't say, but you know how tight-lipped NASA always is. Never.
Yeah, I kind of expected that, and you know, here's the blueprint. Here's the tank. This is what it is. It doesn't look like it had fallen off of. It doesn't look like something from a jet. It's a ball. And
I in Watcher 7, I put some diagrams from the Aeronautical Space Association with various hydrazine tanks that are used, on space vehicles, and this thing looked pretty similar to one of those, but we can't say conclusively that's what it was.
Okay, a couple of questions that have come in. Well, no, actually, it's about 20. Everybody wants to know LA's thoughts on Nibiru.
Well, I've always been a huge Nibiru skeptic. We interviewed several people about it, and one person, I won't mention his name, was so sure it was going to happen in 2012, and Nibiru is going to come, and it's going to change everything in the world as we know it, and blah blah blah. And look, this is what. Hear what I'm saying. Hear my heart here, okay?
Okay.
We can talk about this stuff, What's really happening right under our noses is the prophecies that were written thousands of years ago. And I'm not trying to dodge the question. We can talk about Nibiru. We've heard about it, and I get it. In the meantime, wars and rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines and pestilence, it's all happening right in front of our noses. The prophecies that we're told to look for, or the signs that we're told to look for, are happening on a global level. The fish and animal die-offs, the record colds, the record droughts, the record temperatures, okay? The honeybees die off. The wars, which are constantly plaguing the planet, the tumultuousness of the Middle East that we see, the volcanic activity, which now we've got Bartabunga, which is a super volcano. We've got Yellowstone, which is a super volcano. A volcano in Japan just blew. We've got a series of earthquakes where now the 7.0, which let's say 20 years ago was, whoa, 7.0, is basically the norm. The 9.0 now, which devastated Fukushima and the Fukushima prefecture several years ago, that was not unprecedented, but that was a big one. And preceding that, of course, was the Haitian earthquake. The problem is reactor 4 in Fukushima has not been contained. The stuff is still leaking, and oh, don't worry about that, but just don't eat the sushi, folks. The Ring of Fire, which is constantly throwing these incredible earthquakes around and around and around she goes, and they go from Alaska down the west coast of North, Central, and South America. It swings out to Vanuatu, an island which is plagued by earthquakes, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and back up around the Aleutians to Alaska. It's called the Ring of Fire, very, very unstable. So we look at all this stuff. We look at the rise of ISIL. We look at the rise of radical Islam. We understand that the global phenomenon of the Arab Spring happened because one man couldn't pay or couldn't feed his family because of rising food prices. We are looking at California major drought, which again is going to affect the food. The bee die-off affecting the food. The record floods in the Midwest affecting the food. Meat is at all-time high prices. I mean, it's all happening right under our stinking noses if we know what to look for. And when taken all together, and I've just painted a very serious, sobering picture of where the globe is and what's happening on a global level. It's not going away. It's not getting better, in my opinion. And we are headed towards some sort of a climax. All of this was written thousands of years ago and is now coming to life.
So are you saying then that Nibiru is real, is what you're saying? If everything else is that what you're suggesting?
No, I'm suggesting that the place to watch is not for this. Oh, look, we're also told one of the prophecies that there'll be signs in the heavens. We're told that in Earth. So I'm expecting comets, close flybys, all sorts of weird stuff to happen. I'm expecting that, but that's only one of the signs. When we look at all the things, and I just sort of gave you a quick overview of where the planet is at right now. We are, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, we're on overdrive. This thing is heating up like I've never seen it, and I've been following this stuff for 34 years. I mean, this is really, it's heating up. It's right in front of our noses. And, more people, look, I was at some place in the Midwest last week, okay, undisclosed location, on assignment, looking at artifacts and doing all this stuff. And we would go to these different restaurants and eat every night. And most people that I heard, the conversation was about sports. Their team, what's going on. It's like medication. People are like, they can rattle off baseball scores and who's going to be the pennant and this football team and all this stuff. And it's like, look, sports are great. I get it. Fine. But in the meantime, let's look around at what's going on here. I mean, at the Eyjafjallajökull volcano, which blew a couple of years ago, it closed the airspace over northern Europe for about 2 weeks, resulting in billions of dollars in economic loss for the airlines. Well, if Yellowstone goes, that's a super volcano. If the Bartabunga goes, which is in Iceland, that's a super volcano. That's a game changer. That's like Krakatoa, 150 years ago when that thing blew. In Indonesia, you could hear it in San Francisco. That's how loud it was. It covered the world in an ash cloud, and crops didn't grow. Well, the population wasn't what we have today. Population was a whole lot less. And we didn't have modernity that we have today. We didn't have all these devices. We're not hooked up. 150 years ago, there was no electricity, no plumbing, no nothing, no cars. None of this stuff exists. Now it's all here. I mean, God forbid there should be an electromagnetic pulse weapon, an EMP. I mean, that's a total game changer when it wipes out the grid. And that is a real threat to the United States. Our grid is incredibly vulnerable. And all a terrorist has to do is just get a nuke, let that thing blow it up 200 miles over the heartland, and that's it. The shockwave goes out, and life as we know it, it's over. Millions would die in the first 6 months. If it happened in the winter, they'd die within a month because everything shuts down.
Yeah, we're
Everything
lucky.
shuts down.
We're so every single day I think about that
Yep.
we are so lucky. Say hi to Dino. Dino, welcome to the program.
Hello everybody.
Hi,
Hello,
Dino.
Jimmy. Hello, LA. I have a little to offer on this subject. I mean, you've cataloged LA, a lot of things that are happening now that I acknowledge, and some appear to be getting worse. I guess all I can say is that I was what I thought was a good Catholic until I was about 17 and I started having sex, and I am very respectful of women, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I started to realize that there were, for me, a lot of fallacies in the Catholic religion, so I have not followed it since. So as far as prophecies or this or that, all I can say is we got to keep on going on. We got to keep on keeping on, keep on being vigilant. Whether you believe a prophecy or not can freeze you up. And if you get afraid of everything, you stop thinking. And if you stop thinking, you stop trying. And that's all I can add to that.
Thank you, Dino.
I do have two things, though, real quick.
Okay.
I hope that in the future we will look more into Nikola Tesla, because a lot of things that may be happening now may be related to black tech, and I'd like to have someone that knew more about Tesla. I just finished a biography. And the second topic, which we haven't had time for, maybe later in the week, I have just investigated the Internet Archive, which happens to be in San Francisco, the main headquarters, and I think we need to discuss that some evening.
Okay. Thank you, Dino.
All right. Thank you for listening.
All the best. The point that he was making, and I think we can
could get into weather modification.
Well, but also if we sit and ponder and worry about prophecies, then we don't move forward, and we stop what we're doing and expect something, and don't change our lives because we're too dependent on what potentially could happen that we don't have any control over. L.A.? L.A., are you there?
I am. I'm talking my mute button again. Sorry, guys.
Man.
I
I'm just
know.
like,
Yeah, we lost you.
I'm here, though, right?
yeah, now you're back.
All right. I'm eating pistachios. How totally rude and unprofessional. Thank you. But listen, the prophecy says, when you see these things, what things? Wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places, and troublesome times. Okay, that's what it says. Those are the list of things we're to look for. Then it says, look up. It doesn't say build a bomb shelter or cower in the corner in fear. It says look up and know, I'm paraphrasing here, and know that your redemption is coming. That's what it says. That's what it tells us to do. In other words, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at it, and this is where, with all due respect to Dino, I have a much, much broader, in my opinion, sense of what's happening. We are witnessing a cosmic war, the end of a cosmic war, which has raged in an unseen dimension, literally for millennia, and is now beginning to spill out in what I would consider these last days on planet Earth. And we're watching it happen. And I am excited by that, because the God of this world, the prince of this world, who is incredibly malevolent and evil, is about to be overthrown. And we know that. That's going to happen. This system that the world has been enslaved under is about to come to a crashing halt in the not too distant future. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I don't know. I'm not a date setter. but we're rapidly moving to the time where finally the big paradigm shift's going to happen. And I can't wait for that, because life as we know it will change forever, and change in a way that we can't even imagine.
Let's take another call. Hi, you're live with Rick Shaw and L.A. Marzulli. Who's calling?
My name is Yvonne in Tennessee.
What was your name again?
Yvonne.
Hi, Yvonne. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm a first-time caller.
Yes, you are. We'll get you some DVDs here.
Great.
Okay, Yvonne, go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
Jimmy, first I want to thank you for having L.A. and Rick on your program. I have watched them on Prophecy in the News, and they are right in line with what I'm thinking and feeling is happening spiritually and on our planet right now.
Thank you for that. But it's what this show is about. It's about teaching, learning, discovery, and hanging out and having a conversation. So thank you for that, though. Okay, question for L.A. or Rick.
No, not a question. Just thank you so much for being there.
Oh, okay. Well, that
continue to do what you're doing, and I would love to have DVD.
Okay, this is what you want to do right now. I've got your name written down. Just send Rita an email, rita@jimmychurchradio.com, and send us your address. We'll get you those DVDs out.
I sure will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Bye-bye.
With all of the evidence that, and I'll throw this out to both of you, but with all of the evidence that is out there for visitation, what's the strongest? I throw this question out to every guest. If you're in court, right, you're in federal court, and you've got one crack at it, you're F. Lee Bailey, what's the evidence that you bring forward, that one piece?
Rick?
Well, as you know, Jimmy, I've been working on this other documentary about the Torah codes, and pretty much everybody has the...
Okay, I just brought in a caller. Turn down your radio or I'm going to hang up.
Sorry, Jimmy. Is that better?
Okay. Who's calling?
Hey, it's Jonas. How are you?
Hey, Jonas. Okay, really quick because we're out of time, and Rick was right in the middle of an answer. What question do you have for the guys?
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry. I was just curious if LA might have considered this rise in prophetic activity might just be a rise in global communication. I mean, now we're in a state where we can actually learn about what's going on halfway across the globe, whereas when this was all written, people didn't know what was going on, the next town over until a horse or a camel or whatever the animal may be carried a person over. And I'll take my answer off there. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Hey, that's a great question, Jonas. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
That's a great question, L.A.
Absolutely. And he makes a good point. The problem is that even in modernity, you go back 20, 30, 40 years, go back before Israel becomes a nation, and the prophetic clock starts ticking with the rebirth of Israel. That starts the clock ticking. And that happens in 1949. Everything changes. And, okay, it didn't happen quickly. It's happening slowly. They're called the birth pangs. And that scripture is related. It's like a woman in having birth. And they come slowly, and then they become faster and faster. Look, now we've got Ebola to worry about. I painted a picture, and you're right. Because of the telecommunications, now we know when an earthquake happens in Fukushima, I know about it. My iPhone pings. I get it. So he's right in one respect that we see these things. We can keep track of these things. But look at the record. Look at the temperature records, which have been broken just in the last year. Look at the plethora of dead animals, fish, and bird die-offs. Look at the bee population die-off. As far as I know, that's unprecedented.
Well, like what I was about to say a minute ago, which kind of fortifies some of the things that LA was talking about, is that never have I seen all of these professors and rabbis that I've been working with on the Torah Code project where they talk almost entirely about the return of the Messiah. Now these guys are Jews. They believe in, they're steeped in Judaic law. Some are Orthodox rabbis, and others are not, but they're all basically living that life. They're eating kosher foods. They're in Israel and they feel close to what's going on. And all of these Torah codes that are coming out now, every other one of them has something to do with the Messiah. And they know that they can't peg it to any date because that would be like, you're not supposed to do that. But nevertheless, what's coming out of the Torah from a computer standpoint right now is really quite phenomenal.
Can it be coincidence? The famous comparison. You could take Moby Dick and apply the Torah code to it and get the same information.
Right. And we know that. If you have enough, like Professor Haralick calls it, a text population. In other words, if you have a book with enough letters in it, yeah, you can cause a computer to search it and find keywords and create a table with it. But the problem with that theory is that rarely does it end up in a table where all of the letters are almost touching or overlapping in close proximity to each other like they do in the Torah text. I mean, it just... people will see that in this film because we did a comparison. We took what they call monkey texts, which are basically random Hebrew texts, and they did the same tables, looked it up in several different ones, and yeah, they found the words in there, but they were totally insignificant from a probability standpoint. They were meaningless because the other books had thousands of characters between words, and they were spread all over the page, where the Torah text, it ended up, in one case, being the entire table ended up in one chapter of the book of Numbers. I mean, it was like it was planned that way. So something really phenomenal is going on inside of the Torah text, and as far as the timing of events, we wouldn't know about this unless we had computers, and this has only been when the first guy really showed his research on a computer was in 1976, and he showed it to Professor Eliyahu Rips, and that was like the first test. And so in the early 80s, they started actually doing like part of the book of Genesis in the Torah in like an Apple II computer, because that's all that basically was available back then.
Right.
And so I asked him, I said, well, how did you guys do that? There weren't any Hebrew fonts. He said they assigned each letter, each glyph of the Hebrew font a number, and then they fed the numbers into the computer. And I said, oh, that's just unbelievably complicated. He said, no, it was quite simple, actually. Of course, this is like a world-class mathematician I'm talking to.
Sure.
But that's how they did it, and they kept finding things that they didn't expect to find. Later, when computers became better and more powerful, and you could actually put an entire Torah into the computer, they came up with these what looks like crossword puzzles where words actually intersect and all that, and what's coming out of there is just unbelievable.
When you first started your research into the Torah codes, did you go in objective and then come out feeling another way, or is this just a presentation of the evidence? Well,
I've been at it for a long time. I first found out about it by reading Michael Drosnin's book called The Bible Codes, and that was back in 1998 when his book came out like the year before, and he was on some morning talk show. And well, that sounds really interesting. So I bought the book, and I was flying from Atlanta to Los Angeles in those days, and read it on the plane, and thought, well, I'll never meet these guys. They're all in Jerusalem. I can't ask them any questions. And through a total fluke, a friend of mine ended up sitting next to Professor Haralick on a plane bound for New York, and tosses him his cell phone when they land in LaGuardia, and I'm connected to the world experts just like that. It was very, very weird. And that was in 2006. So we've been communicating with each other on a personal and ongoing basis all of this time, and I've seen the kind of evolution of the codes and what they're doing now. And what Professor Haralick is doing is working on codes that are basically 3D, or what he'd call 2.5D. You'd have actual Z-axis codes coming towards the camera or away from you. Very complicated stuff. I mean, that these guys are doing. The math involved is really incredible.
But did you go in objective and come out another way?
That's a good question. I mean, I had times where I really doubted that this was really going on, especially when we did some experiments on the year 2012. We did some tables about 2012, and this is back 6 years before 2012. I asked the rabbis, well, what does the Torah code say about 2012? Because I figured, everybody's calling it the end of the world. What we ended up discovering was that the Torah codes are not supposed to be used as a predictive tool, but yet sometimes they do that. And we don't know when it's doing it and when it's not doing it, because this is really advanced technology.
I'm just
what it also may be doing is basically echoing the zeitgeist of the times. What's in the newspapers, what's in our internet.
Right.
It's copying that information, and you can pull it out of the Torah codes.
Right. Yeah, I'm uneasy with it. I almost don't want it to be real. I'm being straight up. That's just I'm very uncomfortable with it. It's one of those phenomena where if it's real, and it's feeling more and more like there's something there to me. I read the Bible codes when it first came out.
Yeah,
and I was uneasy with it, as with anything that is, paranormal like that. If it turns out to be real, if the thing that you're seeing in your house really is the ghost of your grandmother, do you really want to know?
Well, here's a great example. Here's something that actually happened. Remember, when was it? 2012, when there was Comet Elenin, and everybody was talking about it. You remember that, Jimmy, right?
Yes.
And everybody said that's going to sweep by the Earth, and it's got the tail and ejecta the size of Jupiter. It's going to cause like 3 days of darkness, yada, yada, yada. We kept hearing this. Then one day I had my car radio on, and I was running down the street, and they said, it appears that Comet Elenin is breaking up. It's passed too close to the sun. Well, I remembered some table that I had read in Drosnin's first book. I run home and I open it up, and I think it was page 134. There was a table that said, in 5772, which is 2012, and it said comet, and then it said on another line, I will break it in pieces.
No.
It did. So I immediately scanned that page, and I sent it to my rabbi and professor friends in Israel. I said, check this out for me, please. And so Rabbi Glazerson and Dr. Rotenberg started working on it and did their own table on Comet Elenin. Said the same stuff. It gives me kind of chills just telling you this. But down in the lower left-hand corner, there was a phrase all in one line, and it said, in the end of days.
Yeah, see, do you really want to know that? L.A., are you with me? Do you really want to know?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I'm a frank supernaturalist, and I believe that the Torah codes give us an indication that whoever, and of course I have definitive answers to the whoever is, but whoever penned that book, it's just unbelievable. Not only are there prophetic messages all the way through it, as Chuck Missler calls it, it's an integrated message system for us, for anyone who wants to read it. But as Rick points out, and that's what's so fascinating about the Torah Code film, that you get these messages that are there that just shouldn't be there. I mean, there's just, you talked about Moby Dick. Well, you can find anything in a 1,000-letter, ELS or whatever, where they skip over 1,000 letters to the next one. These are all very tight. I mean, very, very tight tables, a lot of them. And that just, and then sometimes they'll be right over the plain text. It's like, whoa, you find the table within a story in the Bible that's talking about the very thing that you're looking for. It's like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
So they're unbelievable. They're just
there's the
incredible.
plain text example. A great one is, remember when BP had the oil leaking in the Gulf, the oil well. There's a table that says oil well in the USA, gives the date, and all of these codes were found over the plain text scripture that says, "And the fountains of the deep were broken up."
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like I said, I don't want to know. Hey guys, thank you. We've got a lot of stuff that the three of us are going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. But thank you for coming on tonight. It was all.